Welcome to another edition of Great Health, Abundant Happiness, and Outrageous Love.
Ooh.
We want to talk a little bit about communication. It's very key in all relationships, specifically with your loved one, but obviously all relationships on the planet, whether it be business or social. But I wanted to throw out a few tips there. We were asked by a few people, how do we communicate?
Exactly. And I want to preface that with it has definitely been a work in progress for us. We'll be married 29 years next month. And, in the very beginning, communication is just different because your constant vibrational energy is at love, which is really high. And so you're communicating at this energy that's sort of exploding like fireworks. That's why I think they say when you're in love, you see fireworks. And then as you settle in to your relationship, I don't want to say things change, but life changes every day anyway, right?
You get comfortable.
You get a little bit comfortable, right?
You take things for granted. You hate to admit that, but
exactly.
When you first start out, the big difference is you're listening to every little word and innuendo because it's so interesting. You focus on it. I think that's what it is, right? Listening.
Exactly,
is key.
Jeffrey. When you first start dating, you're listening like it's your job. And it is your job. And when you decide to have a relationship with somebody, listening is so important.
Right.
It's the key pillar to success. And, I love the saying that God gave us one mouth and two ears because we should listen.
That's a good one.
Twice as much as we should speak. And, we have gotten very good at listening and becoming, more attentive. And in this day of, distractions and diversions and, cell phones, TVs, etc., it's constantly, there's more obstacles in our way of communicating on a verbal and nonverbal level. And, the first thing you want to do is put down any distractions. Put down your phone. If you're with the person that you love and you're going to have a conversation, make that conversation the focal point and don't let anything distract you. If the phone rings, it can wait. Unless you have an emergency ring set up with a family member, whoever's calling you can wait the 5 or 10 minutes or half hour or hour or 3 hours, whatever it is. And I want to talk about verbal and nonverbal communication because those are both really, really important in a relationship. Sometimes.
Do you want me to take the picture?
Oh,
no, thanks.
Thank you so much.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
People are so nice.
People are so nice. She was offering to take our picture and didn't realize that we're doing a video. So we should have brought her in and asked her about communication because
Right.
I love to get other people's take on it as well. But the verbal and nonverbal is so important. So if somebody tells you something that, maybe is not exactly what you wanted to hear or not a compliment, right? So the tendency might be to go like this. Change it down a little bit because I don't think people are, okay,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. By verbally saying, I hear what you're saying, but by going like this, basically you are closing out the conversation
Right.
with your actions and your vibrations. So that's not a good thing. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, whether it's positive or negative, you always want to have your arms open because it means that your heart and your mind are open to hearing what they're saying. And this is much more of a confrontational gesture, this arm crossing thing or anything like this or, anything that closes your body off from them. And sometimes you'll see somebody not only with their arms crossed, but sitting with their arms and their legs crossed. And I can tell you, whatever conversation that you're having together is not going to be effective because they're completely closed off to it. So if that's you, and I'm not going to lie, that's been me before. And sometimes I'm talking to somebody that I don't want to be talking with, and I'll do that, and I'll find myself doing that, and I'll make that correction because I don't want to send off that negative
Right.
vibration either. So what is more effective, again, getting back to couples, if you're having a conversation, especially one where, maybe it's not all upbeat, it's not all roses, a touch and a gesture are really key because it connects you to the person. Now you're connected to them, and you are making them very aware that what they're saying is important
Right.
to you. You hear them. Again, you don't have to agree.
Right.
That's key. You don't have to always agree on things, and there are many times where Jeffrey and I have differences of opinion on a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, at the end of that moment, we always love each other regardless of our differences of opinions. And sometimes I really love the fact that we have different opinions on things because it allows us to bring to the forefront different things in
Right.
different situations that we
Right.
can each learn from.
Look
right?
at it from a different angle. And you're talking about, when you talk about the nonverbal cues, you're talking about the easy ones too. We talked about this earlier in another video about vibration. So your vibrational energy, it might not be arms being crossed or something like that. You could actually
Great
be
point.
sending off a negative vibe. So you have to be careful about that too. Maybe just thinking like, wow, this is like, I don't agree with this at all. And it's really making me angry. I'm, making this up, but
Right.
people can feel those vibes too.
100%. I mean,
Right.
do you ever go into a store to go buy something and, or you're at a restaurant and the server comes over and you automatically sense, that either, I don't think they like me, or something is funky about that person. It goes both ways.
Right.
That's the vibrational energy that you're feeling. Here's a great example. If you've ever been stopped for speeding or an accident, whatever it is, you immediately get a vibrational energy reading from that officer
Right.
within like seconds, right? And sometimes you get that reading that, hey, this is a really caring, loving person, or I'm getting a ticket and it probably doesn't matter too much what I do because this person's already there.
Right.
So that's another great example of, but again, off task, going back to relationships, because that's really our expertise, is communicating in relationships. And again, so a gentle touch is always important. And at the end of a conversation, a hug, heart to heart, if you hug from your heart to the other person's heart, that's just a great symbolic message that your hearts are still connected, regardless of what transpired in the conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, you want to be open and honest as well, always, right?
Always. And if that trust, that feeling of trust is there, the conversations are going to obviously have a much better outcome. If the feeling of trust is not there, then I would tend to say that your relationship has some really deep issues. And usually, if you don't trust somebody, it's because you have something within your own self that is causing that feeling.
Sure.
Right? So that is an entirely different conversation. But trust is really, really key. I can honestly say there's never, ever been a time in our relationship where I have not trusted you implicitly.
Well, that's good.
Jeffrey traveled a lot. We've talked about that for the first 12 years. And he was definitely in situations where, if I didn't trust him, something could have happened. But again, if I didn't trust him, I'd be sending that out to the universe, to Jeffrey. My energy would focus on that. And guess what? I would almost self-sabotage my own relationship and, force that to happen. So that's something to think about as well.
Right.
If you've got trust issues, don't impose that on the other person. Get inside your own heart, in your own head, and figure out what those
Right.
issues are, because those are very important issues in a relationship. You have to have 120% trust on both sides.
Right. So the
right?
trust, the open and trustful conversation. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was respect, having respect for the other person.
Right.
You know, and giving them that due respect. Right.
Absolutely. There is no place for name calling in conversations.
That's a great point to bring up.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I don't know where little kids get that. I have a pretty good idea.
Sure.
Because everything that we learn from someone else. So they have either seen it with in their own household, or they've seen it in the world, in school, somewhere. And it can stay with you, and it's a terrible, terrible thing, because you can't take back name calling.
Right.
And the other thing I want to throw out there, that you and I made a pact to never discuss, no matter how deep our conversations got, or if we had issues, was the D word. It just is not something that you ever throw out there lightly, because guess what? Once you say it, it's out there.
Yeah.
And it becomes something.
Why put it out there? Yeah.
Why put it out there?
Right.
Right. Unless that is your intention, then don't ever put that out
right,
there. In
right.
fact, whatever your intentions are for your relationship, and I'm just going to take the assumptive that your intentions, or you wouldn't be in the relationship, is to make this the person of your dreams. This is your dream relationship, and that's what we're talking about. You know, so often Jeffrey and I will get, I want what you guys have. You know, I didn't have that the first time around, or we don't have that. If you don't have it now, that doesn't mean that you can't have it tomorrow or in 5 minutes, because it's all a choice.
Right.
Everything is a choice. And a lot of times I'll hear, well, you know, we had a big fight, and, you know, he went in the other room, and he's been sleeping in the other room for, you know, 3 nights. 3 nights turns into a week turns into a month turns into, you know, a year. And we actually have had friends who have stayed married, slept in separate beds, have not had any intimacy in 5 years.
That's a whole nother video.
That's a
Right.
whole different video. But guess what? There's zero communication in that relationship. And that doesn't mean that they need to end it. I
Right.
still think that relationship can get back to the initial vibrational state of love. In fact, we have a very good friend who was working too hard and traveling too much, and his priority and focus was his career. And the kids had left the nest, and his wife was feeling neglected, and she asked for a separation. He was blown away, because in his mind, he was doing his part. But he had been ignoring his relationship. He acknowledged that. And what he started to do was to start asking her out on dates.
Right.
They were separated, and he started to ask her out on dates. And they rekindled the love that's always been there, but he let other things get in front of it and take precedence and more importance over the relationship. And I don't care what anyone says, the relationship is number one. It's the foundation for everything that you do. It's the foundation for a family, if you have a family.
Right.
It's the foundation for your career, because it gives you that feeling. I mean, you would go off to work when I was home with the kids, which was my choice. That's what I wanted to do. I gave up my career to be at home with our kids for a good period of time. And for you to go out of town and come back and know that you were going to be welcomed with a loving, you know, arms and an open heart. I mean, I think that gave you the confidence to continue doing what you were doing, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, I am happy to say the couple that I was referencing are very happily back together. And I think their relationship is stronger than it's ever been.
Well, because now they communicate,
And
right?
because
Back
they're
to communication.
communicating.
Yes.
And both were at fault. She let it go where she wasn't letting him know
Yeah.
that she was feeling neglected, and he carried on doing what he was doing. And then once they both listened to each other and got it back together and did the things that were of the most importance, which is the relationship, it all worked out.
Right.
They're living happily ever after, which is the dream I think that all of us have.
Right.
Wishing you great health, abundant happiness, and outrageous love from Maui, Hawaii.
Go ahead, guys. Click off and subscribe. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks.